Okay, almost there. You good, Sean? Excellent. Okay. Hi at home. Right, so today's readings are quite interesting, I think. What we're looking at is the Old Testament reading and the New Testament reading. And both of them, I think, tell us a little bit about how God deals when life gets really tough and how we deal when life gets really tough. So the Old Testament reading, the one from Lamentations, thank you for reading that, John. We hear that God has steadfast love, that his mercies are new every morning, that he's faithful, that he always is our provider. And that's constant. We hear that all the time throughout the Old Testament, but that's in our reading today. He's a compassionate God, and he knows our needs. And then in the New Testament, we see how people respond when things are really tough for them. So you see that the crowds, they all come running to Jesus. They keep coming to him. They're following him. They're gathering around him. And they press in. Jairus, who works in the synagogue, he falls at Jesus' feet and he begs him repeatedly and repeatedly because his little girl, his daughter, his 12-year-old daughter is so sick and she's dying. And he comes to his feet. And we do that sometimes. We draw closer to God when we're going through a hard time. Sometimes we fall at his feet and we pray. The woman, she heard about Jesus and she came, she touched him, and in her hope, her belief, her faith, she reached out and her bleeding, which had been a problem for 12 years, stopped. She was made well in her belief. But interestingly, the disciples who were with Jesus, and in the story, we're probably the disciples if we're Christians, it was them that said to Jesus when he said, so the woman reaches out and touches him, she's made well just by that, and then Jesus said, somebody touched me. And he's looking around, and the disciples, us now, said, Jesus, there's too many people, don't worry about it. So that's another way that we sometimes deal with pain, our own and others. We just think it's too much, we can't deal with it. And also the people, when he went to Jairus' house, the girl had passed away, and fair enough, people were crying. I would be crying too. But when Jesus said she's asleep, they laughed. And fair enough, she was dead. So why wouldn't you laugh? But nevertheless, that's another way that we respond when people have faith. When we have faith, sometimes we even doubt ourselves. Sometimes we doubt other people's faith when they say, I'll pray for you. And we think, yeah, I'll pray for you, whatever. But these are different ways that we're seeing in the New Testament that we respond when we are in pain. And what I love about the little girl is that she's in so much pain, she's dead. And when Jesus comes to her, she gets up and walks around. And that's a fantastic way to respond, isn't it? When life gets hard and we can still call in on Jesus. But that's the reality of life. There is pain. And some of the pain is dreadful. It could be miscarriage, it could be divorce, it can be diagnosis or debt, and even death. But all of these things, in one way or another, in our lives and in people who we love lives, is slightly unavoidable. And because even the two in the story, the little girl and the older woman, who had been bleeding for 12 years, both of them eventually died. They're not still in Israel somewhere 2,000 years old. So even the worst happens to all of us. But where's God in that? Well, we read in the Old Testament, God's love is steadfast, he's compassionate, he's merciful, and he's our provider. He knows our needs, and he doesn't abandon us in them. Now, sometimes what God uses is our disappointments, when our hopes are completely dashed. And I'll tell you a short story. I'll try and make it short. Years ago, I had this really strong belief that I was being called to go to Afghanistan, to work there and to serve there in however God would want to use me. And all these things kept happening that really made me believe this is truly what God is sending me to do. And I was excited about it. And I made investigations in several places, but because I was a small family of two, myself and my son, nobody could really find a way for that to work because I would have to be looking after my son. They didn't have childcare. So it wouldn't work. And I was so bitterly disappointed because I thought, this is what God wants. So why are all the doors shut? It makes no sense. But then I had a really good friend who's over in Afghanistan. And I was always following them and reading and encouraging them and watching the news. On the BBC News, you can ask it for specific regions in the world. So I asked for Central Asia, and I would look at that all the time. And there was one time when a girl had been abducted, and it was on the news, and it became a big news item. And so in the efforts to try to save her quickly, because all the world was saying, what's going on? You have to save her. The G.I. Joes went in with too much force in an attempt to, they didn't negotiate in the way that they normally would. And unfortunately, this person died because of that. So I was always watching the news to see what was happening so I would know how to pray, because there was not much more I could do but pray and encourage my friends. And then another person was abducted, and it seemed to me that it was where my friends were based. So I texted my friends and said, someone's been abducted, is it near you? Is everyone okay? And my friend said, what did it say? So I told him what it said, and he just didn't get back to me. But after that, I discovered that there was some stuff going on for the team, and they were stressed with lots of things. So I was praying for this person who'd been abducted, and I was praying for my friend's team, and so it went on. And about 6 months or so later, I think it was about that, he came. He was leaving Afghanistan for a while, and he was going home to America, and he stayed with me, and he said that the person that I had seen that was abducted was in his team, and in fact there was another Afghan person who was with that person, so there were two people who'd been abducted. And because I had seen it and told him, they took it out of the news circulation immediately, and they had time for 6 months or however long to negotiate properly and to eventually get these two people safely back home to Afghanistan. I don't know why I'm so emotional. It just is now suddenly. But what that meant was I played a part, and I played a really important part, but I didn't know that at the time. I felt useless. I felt like God couldn't use me because I wasn't there in the trenches and doing the thing that I wanted to do. But actually I was. And so my disappointed hopes was something that God was using. He uses it, all our hurts, all our disappointments, all our pain, all our everything. None of it is wasted. It goes into our compost, if you like. You know, you put your dead bits and your garbage bits in your compost, and in the end you get this awesome soil that grows stuff. Well, that's us. We're the awesome soil full of all our leftover garbagey bits. And he not only uses them, but he uses them to transform us. So when I went through the divorce that I went through years ago, that changed me. It made me the person I am today. And I don't think I would be the person who's going forward for deaconing in September without having gone through that. It changed me to be who I am. And that's what God does. And that song that we sung earlier when we listened to, The Sovereign Over Us, that line, even what the enemy means for evil, you turn it for our good. I used to sing that song over and over again when my life was just at rock bottom. And I held on to those words because I knew that He's going to do something. He'll use it somehow. And that gave me such hope. And I really hope that it does give you some hope. And what we see in Jesus' response in the New Testament reading is that he comes through with the promises of the Old Testament. So God says that his love is steadfast, that he's compassionate, his mercies are new every morning, that he will provide our needs. And then Jesus does that. So he sees the crowds that come to him and he goes to them, he crosses to them. When Jairus is falling at his feet and begging him to help his daughter, Jesus goes with him. When the woman touches Jesus, he immediately looks around. He's trying to find her. He knows someone's there. And then, although she is sort of outcast because of her bleeding, which in Jewish culture was you weren't allowed to be in the gang or in the temple and all sorts of stuff, he not only heals her, but he blesses her. He says, I see you, I recognize your faith. And then he speaks such beauty to her. He says, don't be afraid. And he heals her. And then the last thing I love is when the little girl has been resurrected, he takes her by the hand. And to me, particularly in a time of social distancing where we haven't been able to hug for so long and all of that, the idea of Jesus taking us by the hand when we are either in the middle of it all going wrong or having, as this girl just resurrected, so she's just coming out of it, he's taking her by the hand and he takes us by the hand. And the very last thing Jesus says, which I just think is lovely, I'll find it. Thank you, Sean, for reading the Mark reading too. He says, he told them, the people who were around, to give her, the girl who'd just been resurrected, something to eat. And I love that. And I love it because he's still doing that. He's still feeding us. Every Sunday at the moment, we're having communion together. We're eating, we're bringing something of him into us. But he knows we need him. We need to be regularly coming back to him, asking him to feed us and nourish us. But he also feeds us in his word. And that's something, if we have a Bible to read, we can read every day. And if you don't have a physical Bible, they're easily got online. And if you want a physical Bible and you don't have a physical Bible, come to me and I'll buy you one. Promise. I mean it. There is so much in it that is amazing, just amazing. And it gives us strength. And read it, even if it doesn't make sense, even if some bits are dry, even if some bits are a bit like, what on earth are you talking about? Read it anyway, and then just ask God to help you. And one verse I love in particular is from Peter. And the verse is one that says, cast all your anxieties onto Jesus because he cares for you. And I feel so passionately about that Bible verse that I made a little gift for you guys here at St. Mary's to leave behind because today is my last day. And it's this picture. You can put it wherever it works. You can put it in the toilet, I don't care, just wherever it works. And it just says that, cast all your anxiety on Jesus because he cares for you. And that's just a photo I took from him. But please do hold on to the truth, the wisdom that is in the Bible. Read it as often as you can because he cares for you, he loves you, he wants to pick you up and hold you, run up hills and celebrate on the awesome days, and pick you up and hold you on the awful days. He's there and he loves us. St. Mary's, thank you for having me. I love you very much. Thank you, Esther. We love you too.